Yo, what up? Welcome to another episode of the Oakland Warriors podcast. I'm Patrick, and today, once again, I am joined by my good friend Vubang to talk all things, I guess, Warriors from the week. What's up, Vubang?
What's up, Patrick? Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, man. Yeah. First off, Steph, Melton, Wiggins, all injured this past week. The Warriors lost to the Clippers, and they beat the Pelicans twice, back-to-back home games without. Well, I guess Steph played in against the Clippers in that loss. But I don't know. How you feeling about all this? I think there's a lot of stress when Steph first got hurt.
I think I was very stressed out, just like everybody, just waiting for his MRI all night. I did search on Twitter all the way up until I think 10 a.m. when it came out. But I will say the one silver lining is just getting a lot of players to be able to get some playing time with Steph being out. And I'm talking specifically about Lindy Waters III, who was plus 26 in the first Pelicans game. It's been really amazing to watch him play. And I don't know if you know his whole story, but he's has a Native American background, and he was doing DoorDash, I guess, a few years ago, just right before he got picked up to play for OKC's G League, just like a year and a half ago or something. Pretty amazing story.
Oh, dang. I didn't know the DoorDash bit. That's crazy.
He played for a midnight league before he played in the G League, and he was doing DoorDash to make ends meet.
Yeah, I mean, I love the fact that guy got playing time because he would have been like 13th man. I mean, he was 13th man. He's moved up the ladder a bit into the starting lineup in the second Pelicans game. And, you know, what he represents to me is just the fact that, like, the Warriors have a bunch of shooters again, and the Warriors who ushered in this era of three-point shooting for the last couple of years have not had enough shooters. And whether that's, you know, Klay hunting shots and shooting poor percentages, or Poole doing his thing and falling on his face, Steph has been the only reliable shooter. And now there's just like a bunch of dudes, and it's wild seeing Buddy Hield, Lindy Waters when Steph was in, and, you know, Melton, Moody just chucking shots, and then even Gary Payton is hitting his corner threes pretty high. So it's kind of fun just to see these dudes rain down again.
The thing that gets me, and I know you mentioned Klay and Jordan Poole, you know, regardless of how well they're doing with the other teams right now, which they are, like, there's an amazing number of 3-point shots that both have been making recently. Dunleavy has been pretty good with vibes. I mean, to be able to just let those two guys go, knowing the amount of baggage that they have, and just picking up these guys, like what is he, like 8 for 8 right now for all the pickups? It's been pretty amazing to just be within a reasonable cap space, and also to find Lindy Waters III, who was just like whatever, the 15th man in OKC. It's been pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, Dunleavy is a good GM, plain and simple. He's proven in 2 summers to have made the right moves. And yeah, I know there's a lot of people, like, Warriors Twitter is silly, but there's a lot of people that have been hating on Dunleavy, and Lake, of course, as always, for not making like the big moves, going all in on trying to get Markkanen or Paul George. I mean, didn't seem like the Clippers would have traded Paul George anyway, no matter what, to the Warriors. Paul George, who apparently hasn't played a single minute this season. So you could have Paul George on the bench in street clothes and not have Kuminga, Pods, a bunch of picks, Moody, or whatever. So yeah, I'm so far so good with Dunleavy. And then even if you look at like his 2 picks last year, right? Pods and Trace Jackson Davis. I mean, those guys are solid, man. And I'm really, I don't know, there's good vibes all around this team, man, and amongst, for the most part, the fan base. I don't know, I feel pretty good about this team. And I'll be honest too, like, you've heard me talk about, I've talked ad nauseum about my disappointment and dismay with Draymond Green the last couple of years. I don't know which is stronger, me, like, how much I enjoy watching him on the court, or how much I loathe hearing him talk off the court. You know what I mean? But just seeing him play, I don't know, it's a joy. You know what I mean? It's a joy because he's still the same, like, even though he's older, he's still the same unique player and smart player. And, you know, I appreciate that between the lines.
I don't know if you read his statements about Markkanen recently, something we didn't talk about, but he did seem like he was playing against Markkanen as if he knew that Markkanen could have requested the trade to the Warriors if he wanted to, which was really interesting. No. He also said, like, he doesn't know if Markkanen he doesn't have anything he didn't prove anything. Like, we don't know what the Warriors would look like with Markkanen, because Markkanen hasn't proved anything yet, which is really interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And although, you sit there and you watch like this team, you're like, oh wow, it'd be nice to have Markkanen just as a 7-foot shooter. But I'm enjoying seeing like this team evolve, like and kind of grow and just see what they become. I think the last couple of years it's just been stale and obviously like rough, but I think bringing in the 3 vets and just I mean there's winning always helps, right? If they lost these 2 against the Pelicans, then you're in a bad spot. But
it is fun to think about
back.
how fun the 2 starting lineups have been for the Pelicans games, recognizing obviously Warriors won the game, so it makes it that much more fun. But the fact that Melton, Steph, and Wiggins were injured means you got 2 pretty exciting, fun lineups, which was, first game was Draymond, TJD, Buddy Hield, Moody, and Pods. And then the second one, we had Lindsey Waters come in.
For Moody.
Yeah, for Moody, which were like, those are pretty fun lineups. Obviously, I'd love to have Steph in there, obviously. But I mean, if you saw Steph on the bench, like for these last few years, he does not necessarily want to play 2 back-to-back Pelican home games in the first 5 games. Like, he is not about getting like minutes and awards. Like, he just wants to make it to the playoffs.
I mean, and the beauty of the 2 back-to-back wins is, like, of course, they're 4-1 now, second in the West behind the 4-0 Thunder as of this recording. And it's like the more they win, the slower they can play, bringing Steph back and not forcing him into the lineup because they're flailing. But what I dig about this lineup or this roster so much that we're seeing is, we see that the Warriors function best when they have at least 2 connectors, 2 or more shooters out there, and at least like 2 or 3 good defenders. And they have all those options, like the lineups you just mentioned, right? Like, I consider connectors like obviously Steph, Draymond, Pods. Kyle Anderson's a connector. Kuminga hasn't gotten there yet. I think and then they swapped out Moody for Waters because Waters had such a big night the night before, and it's all good. You know what I mean? And it's fun. It's just plug and play. And then when they bring in their bench dudes, that was the best stuff, right? Everybody talks about strength and numbers and everything, but just like kind of having almost a starting lineup coming off the bench. Granted, they probably wouldn't be a playoff team, but they'd still be. They're still really, really they just know what to do, and they have pretty good chemistry out there. And I don't know. I guess I'm just like kind of geeked after a year or 2 years of hopes and dreams dashed by Draymond.
Yeah, and I feel like Draymond's going to be. I would still bet the under now, just hearing Draymond talk. Like, I know it's all just still talk for him, but he has shown after that first initial tech, which I'm sure he received some comments from Steph about, because his tone after that has been a lot different. So I feel like we're going to get a new Draymond. And what's really great is if you saw the footage of Draymond and Steph, like mimicking Pod's like 2-step, Euro step, or whatever it was that he did, like the pivot shot. Like, I think Draymond respects these rookies, these young guys, everybody that's like, I don't think he had that level of respect with everybody else before. Yeah. And I think he's in a position now to be a mentor plus have a chance to win, which I think he has. This is the opportunity where he gets to do both, which I don't think he's had in the past that often.
Yeah, absolutely. I think he's been a lot better, at least, from the eye test, about bringing these guys along. And, I've read and I've heard interviews where some of the young guys say that Draymond is really helpful to them. And it's wild too, because I remember the Poole punch season a couple years ago, where watching when they went 0-5 on that opening road trip, their first road trip of the season, and then looking at the bench, and it was like Moody, Kuminga, Wiseman, Baldwin, Rollins, and just all these like young dudes. And then at a certain point, right, because the joy had been like, the air was taken out of the building, whatever, that the joy cam that the broadcast sometimes has on the bench, it felt like manufactured. Like people would have to tell people to stand up and cheer, especially those young guys, because they didn't know what to do. And they were largely reserved kind of group of dudes. And just watching these two Pelicans games, I mean, they're going off the vets and the youngsters. So it's fun to see. And even Stackhouse, man, Stackhouse as a coach, he's jumping off the bench and like yelling, and like he's kind of like, slapping his hands and stuff like that when good things and bad things happen. So there's a lot of emotion out there, and I think it's all positive.
Back to the Dunleavy situation again. I will say that like all of the trades that he's made were leading up to this vibes, right? All those guys that you listed, like even Rollins, like what didn't he just didn't he get arrested for shoplifting? Like there's all of these moves that he made to bring folks in and get folks out. But I would also say like there's a lot of trades that he didn't make that are helping as well. Like obviously the Markkanen one, but like looking at Brandon Ingram play, like BI, like, do you want BI on this team? Like, you got 2 games with him. I do not want him, right? That he's been attached to the Warriors for a while. And then I know there's been talk of Ben Simmons coming in and replacing Draymond, which is hilarious.
I mean, there's still talk about that? I thought that I heard that in like 3 years.
Okay, no, I just clicked on Twitter the other day and it's still there because he's doing terrible, obviously, right now. But like, imagine all the trades that a young GM could make to make a splash. Like Dunleavy looks like he has job security and is making trades for even, post Draymond and post Steph. I feel like he has the red light also, the green light from Steph and Draymond to just be like, we're only going to make the trades to get you a championship this year. That'll be worth it. And otherwise, we're just basically going to maintain stability. And Draymond's already said that publicly, which is great. Like how many times do players actually buy into that, especially at this age in their contracts?
And I mean, it's the culture, obviously, and the continuity and the smarts of having and knowing about continuity and having somebody like Bob Myers ahead of time and Dunleavy learning under his wing the front office GM stuff. Because, I mean, it's fresh in my memory, even though it's been decades, all those knee-jerk bad moves that happened in the 90s and the aughts, and you see it less frequently today because all these GMs grew up in that era and they've seen all the mistakes. But it's like when, I always like to point out when Stan Van Gundy was up for the Warriors gig and he wanted the GM president job, and that was already taken by Myers, and they said no, and so he went to the Pistons and he immediately traded for Blake Griffin. And it was like, that's a splash, right? And that's what kills a franchise, because he gets fired, he gets paid for a couple more years, but the Pistons and their fans have to deal with those terrible moves. It weighs on them, so and they're still recovering from that, even though they've had a ton of high draft picks. So I think, I'm enjoying the trajectory they're on. And I said at the beginning of the season, I just want good vibes and I want to be entertained. And so far they've 100% delivered on all that. So, props and yeah.
Good. I mean, if we're talking good vibes and being entertained, I do want to talk about Kuminga, because I feel like this is the only not 100% vibe player right now. There's just the awkwardness of not being signed right now. And so I do, he's been playing better off the bench. I don't like his initial comments about being benched. Like, oh, Steve Kerr texted me. Like, I don't know what this means. It sort of seems like he has a lack of self-awareness, in that he's probably the only player or the only person who doesn't realize that he's out there playing for a contract versus playing as a teammate. I don't like that. Like, he's been saying better things now. I'm sure his publicist got a hold of him and got him to say better things now coming off the bench, but having better numbers off the bench has definitely helped him be able to accept that role. But, Andre Iguodala was not happy about being benched originally. But we'll see what happens in this case. Yeah,
I mean, I think with Kuminga, honestly, that doesn't bug me too much. When I did read those quotes, I was like, oh, that's gonna light a fire. That's gonna get a lot of comments on these articles. But I'm a Kuminga believer, apologist, whatever at this point. And I think that, I read that Dre and Steph were all behind, and they were pushing for the starting unit that they started the season with. And who knows what happens and when Steph comes back, and if they go back to that and give it another look. But like I said earlier, it really, really depends. We all know that that's a tough, lineup in terms of spreading the floor. And even if Wiggins and Kuminga started like hitting 40% for half the season, the reputations aren't strong enough to kind of spread the floor right away. But, and it also creates like a lot of traffic in the lane when you have Jackson Davis and Wiggins and Draymond and all that stuff, and Kuminga trying to dive in. It doesn't bug me at this point with Kuminga saying any of that stuff. When I watched him play, when I watched him versus the Pelicans, I was like, okay, he's still not as fluid off the bounce and whatnot, but he can still do what he does best. And coming off the bench so far, he's been able just to be that guy, that scorer. They put the ball in his hands a lot. There were a couple lineups versus the Pelicans where they didn't have any other quote unquote connectors out there. And it was mixed results, but he's going to need those reps to try to get him where he needs to be, So
the last 3 games are Moody or JK after the last
was the question?
The question I'm going to ask you at every podcast: who would you rather have based on the most recent games, JK or Moody?
I will always want Kuminga on the team.
No, just from the most recent games.
Yeah, I'll take Kuminga.
Someone's delusional and doesn't look at the box score, but that's fine.
Well, tell me what I'm missing from the box score when it comes to Moody and Kuminga. And I love Moody. You know what I mean? So it's just because you're putting them up against each other doesn't mean I dislike one over the other.
But you're right. Yeah, for the most recent games, Kuminga has been better off of Moody, but just the eye test, I mean, it just doesn't feel like long-term. Kuminga is there's still a ceiling for him. And I don't know if reaching that ceiling means that the Warriors have to play any different or he goes to another team and plays, right? The ceiling for Moody is he's like a pivotal part of the system. So that's just my take all the time when it comes to those two.
Yeah, no, I get that. And, this season right now, like as of today, as of recording this, it could go any direction. We don't know. You know what I mean? Like they could continue to win and Kuminga could blossom on the bench. Someone else could get hurt and then he could find himself back in the starting lineup and he could either do well or do poorly. So it's tough to say in terms of just like watching him, that eye test, like he's making some of the similar mistakes here and there, but I think, I'm going to give him some time and see if he can, show that he's worth what he wants. It's only been 5 games and, I'm a believer. I'm a believer till, well, I won't say the end until I'm proven otherwise for sure.
Great. So now that we're looking at the past, why don't we take a look at the future and what you think of the next few games? I'm really excited about, let's see, who are you excited to watch?
Okay. So I think since we last recorded, the Warriors went 3-1 because we recorded like before the Utah game. So they beat Utah, the Clips, and of course the Pelicans twice. So coming up next. Oh yeah, okay. Lost to the Clips and beat the Pels twice. And coming up, they're on the road at the Rockets, at the Wiz, at Boston, at Cleveland. That takes us to next Friday. So that's 4 games on the road. Phil Jackson famously said, like with even during the heyday of the Jordan years, that you should at the very least you should be happy, or you should go for 500 on any road trip. You know what I mean? So I think they'll get at least 2. I think they can get Houston and of course Washington, the Boston and Cleveland. If they get one of those, then we're on to something. You know what I mean? Really on to something.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Cleveland is pretty big, and the Celtics are the best team. And I mean, you're basically playing the best team in the West and the best team in the East. Actually, the Cleveland is technically
they're both in the East. They're both in the East, man.
No. I'm talking about the Thunder. When you're talking about
they got the Thunder.
Yeah, the Thunder come after the
following
Cavs.
Sunday.
It's a pretty tough schedule. The back end of this road trip is obviously probably the toughest we'll ever have this year. So I think we'll be lucky to get three of five, but that'll be great. 3 of 5 would be amazing.
If they get 3 or 5, then the projections for this team might be a little bit different, but it's a great challenge, right? It's a great challenge. I don't know when Steph's coming back, right? And Wiggins and Melton. So that makes a huge difference if they go in shorthanded. And, the bench guys at the end, like Waters, Moody, whomever, benches play worse on the road, of course. So, we'll see.
My guess is they're going to save Steph until the Mavs home game.
Interesting.
That's my guess.
Interesting. Yeah, they could. So, okay. So I was just looking at the next 4 games next week, but you're going to let's look at the whole
away
the whole road trip. Houston, Washington, Boston, Cleveland, OKC. Okay. So yeah, you can't come back 500 from that. So what's your prediction?
I mean, I think we lose the Rocket. I mean, we win the Rockets and Wizards game. And I'm just hoping for one of the 3 between the Thunder, Cavs, and Celtics. I'm guessing it's going to be the Cavs, but because I don't think that their record right now in the East is real. I don't think they're the best team in the East. Yeah,
I mean, Boston's definitely the best team in the East.
Statistically, right now they're number 1 in the East. That's why.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Boston. Oh, sorry. So I'm, I'll be optimistic. I'm going 3-2. That is a tough back end of that. I'm just going to take a quick peek and see who these teams play before the Warriors. So the Cavs, they have a day off. They play in New Orleans, and they come home, play the Warriors, and then the Celtics, they have a day off. They play in Atlanta, and then OKC. Okay, they also have. Wait, no, what do they got? Okay, yeah, they also got a day off. So I will pick. You're picking Cleveland for fun. I'm going to pick the Celtics as the team to beat.
Yeah, I feel like they split the Celtic series every year.
Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see how that goes. So 3-2 for both of us. Real quick, I just want to touch on some former Warriors just checking in. This happened at the end of last week after we recorded, and I just got to say, it sucks that James Wiseman, former number 2 pick in 2020, star-crossed, man. That guy tore his Achilles, and I think, honestly, I think his NBA career is done, if not his basketball career, right? Like he was barely hanging on, and he relies, in theory, on his athleticism, and he's young, but still, that's it's tough to come back from that. It's tough for Klay, and Klay's a Hall of Famer, and it's tough for a guy who's just trying to find his way in the league,
and at his height.
Yeah,
that's especially true.
I mean, it's such a definition of star-crossed, man. The guy gets booted off, suspended from his Memphis team, and then starts his rookie season in a pandemic, catches COVID in the shortened training camp, and then everything else that happens, and then ends it 4 years later, potentially with an Achilles tear. So, he has way more money than I'll ever see, but it's a shame regardless.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to say anything bad about him, so maybe I should just stop, but
yeah,
Klay, I will say, I mean, if he played out his full season with in Memphis, I just wonder if he would still be the number 2 pick. That's all I'll say.
Yeah. I mean, there's a bajillion what ifs if he doesn't tear his meniscus. Let's see. All right. Klay. Klay's doing pretty good. We had a good first couple of games with the Mavericks, and, I'm looking forward to seeing when he comes back. The word is out that the Warriors have the quote unquote, the coolest thing ever for Klay's return. Apparently everybody's in 5th grade. I
mean, what do you predicted it's going to be? I mean, the joke is probably that they're going to have a statue designed by the same Dwyane Wade statue maker ready for him.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome, because hopefully it's when he's like holding up 4 fingers, at Devin Booker or something.
Right. But really though, like, you really do think it's going to be retiring his jersey, right? That just seems like an inappropriate time to retire his jersey.
You say inappropriate or appropriate?
Inappropriate, isn't that? Yep. I mean, he should retire his jersey when he doesn't play anymore, and when he comes back, and when he doesn't hate the Warriors as much.
Yeah, no one retires a jersey until the person's retired.
But that's what they're saying. This is never, whatever they have planned, it's never been done before. So we have to talk about things that have never been done before.
Yeah, I mean, they could have like somebody,
2 videos.
On a rocket ship. I mean, like, that's never been done before. But like, you just don't retire somebody's number because what if he comes back? I don't know. I don't know.
Jordan
Yeah, 2
played with a
videos.
statue. Jordan played basketball with a statue in front of the arena. Anything is
Yeah,
possible.
but that was a very, very unique case. But I don't know. I have no idea what the coolest thing ever would be. I don't know. What else? What else you have? Any guesses?
Any guesses? I mean,
Yeah.
have you been to Chase Center yet?
Nah.
So the coolest thing about Chase Center is that they have all of this original artwork that is all Warriors related. Like, we are the only team that has ever inundated the arena with artwork of 3 players who never won a championship and only played together for like 2.5 seasons, run TMC. And so, I mean, my guess is, short of a statue and not retiring a jersey, they're going to put up some piece of artwork that might be very Klay-esque. Like, maybe it's a mural or something. So that would be my guess.
A mural of Dwyane Wade.
Dwyane Wade muralist, yeah.
All right. And then Jordan Poole apparently is playing pretty well. Any hot takes on that?
It's the beginning of the season for the Wizards, so good for them. I mean, it's the Wizards still, so great. I mean, I'm still very even if he plays to his fullest potential, we just couldn't afford that contract. And I would rather have Pods and Lindy Waters III and 30 games of DeAnthony Melton than Poole, but good for him. I mean, I really do hope he does really well. I just don't think the Wizards will always have good player, bad, great stats, bad team kind of player. So
yeah, I'm pulling for Poole too, because even though I didn't like him on the Warriors, I thought he got the short end of the stick with the punching thing, and that really kind of turned his career in a weird direction. And I thought it was the proper decision to trade him, but hopefully he can get back on track and not be the butt of jokes. But it's only been like 2 or 3 games, and we'll see everything gravitate towards the mean eventually.
November 4th. I mean, I'm definitely going to watch that game from the very beginning to the very end, just to see his reaction to things.
Yeah. I'm going to tune into that too. Cool, man. Any other final thoughts on the weekend Warriors?
I mean, I really wish. Did we have an over under on DeAnthony Melton games? Because I feel really bad.
Oh yeah. The bold predictions episode, I said 20. He would make it 20 or 25 games before getting hurt.
Yeah, so
he made it 3.
Yeah, so that's unfortunate. But that was the first text I got from folks from my friend from Philly. I was like, enjoy the DeAnthony Melton experience. You're going to get him hopefully by the playoffs. Bubble wrap him until the playoffs. I think his exact words were bubble wrap him until the playoffs.
But, luckily there's a lot of depth, and that's the whole point, because as we've talked about before, the 3 dudes they signed, well, I don't know about Kyle Anderson, but at least Buddy Hield and Melton do have some injury history there. So luckily we got Waters. Luckily Moody's playing up, so I'm enjoying seeing this team, and it's pleasant surprise, I suppose, because you don't know what you're gonna get, but it seems to be entertaining nonetheless. So do you have any thoughts on the Dwyane Wade statue?
I have a lot of thoughts. I don't think that it should be expressed in such a limited format as 30 minutes. But what I will say is I do agree with folks that I've talked to, I think you as well, that it's probably best to move away from this bronze medium where you can't really depict a person's face as well as you might like. And if you do depict a person's face, maybe the essence of the person rather than a facsimile that is not quite as well sort of made. But one thing the biggest question I have is all these people that make statues, whether it's Jordan at the United Center or whatever it's called now, and all the statues in front of crypto.com, are these artists people who watch sports and are familiar with sports? Or are they just looking at a photograph and making these statues? Like, do they know what Dwyane Wade's face looks like?
I assume they do watch some sports, and I assume they do know what Dwyane Wade looks like. But at the end of the day, I think you're right. Like, whatever material, this metal, bronze, whatever, it's a not easy to work with. So we'll leave it at that. I thought it was hilarious, all this stuff going around. And, I think if they're going to do something like they should do like a Rodin thing. You know what I mean? Like something that is kind of like human-ish, but like very, very interpretive. You know what I mean? Like just like you said, grabbing that essence. I think that stuff would be cool instead of the realistic realism that of that Dwyane Wade moment when he was like pointing and saying, "This is my house."
Part of the problem is that his face pointing forwards is like 90% of the statue. I went back and looked at the Jordan statue, and if you zoom in on his face, it actually looks nothing like Jordan. But nobody looks at Jordan's face in that silhouette that we all know of him. You see him from, I guess, the balls up, right? Because it's a very tall statue, and the head and the face are turned the other way. So you see the side of his face. So it's all still profile. And so if everybody just go and look at Jordan's face in that statue, if you can find a front facing version, the problem is this statue, the essence is him facing forward at you. So
yeah, I mean, that one was, as far as I recall, and at least in the NBA, the first statue for a player. And there's some artistry to that one, like in the way it's conceived and the way it's rendered. So I don't actually mind that one, but like, I kind of think the whole statue trend is kind of silly. And, if they're going to look this bad, as I've said before, they just make giant bobbleheads, man. That'd be awesome. I would love to see Klay, Steph, and Draymond just as bobbleheads outside of Chase Center.
So as a person who mentions bobbleheads multiple times in this podcast, what I've noticed with Steph's bobbleheads is for the last 5 years, they have been using the same mold for his face. So if you look at every single Steph bobblehead from the past 5 years, it's the exact same face. Everything before then, it's just random. It's just kind of poor facsimiles of his face. And if you go back to the very beginning of his career, I think they just use a random, like generic face for most bobbleheads. And so I think if they can just use the mold that they use for Steph's bobblehead now for the bronze statue, sure, that's great. I just don't know the logistics of pouring hot flaming bronze into a bobblehead mold. But as somebody who's seen the Manute Bol life-size bobblehead statue, it's not fun to look at a big ass bobblehead. It's just not. It's just very scary. It's like if you're afraid of clowns, then you'll be afraid of this.
All right.
Question before we end: do you like the new jerseys, the City Edition, the white, red?
I'm a little confused. I know they had blue versions of that the year they won the title. It was basically the same exact uniform, but blue, right?
I think they're two separate uniforms. But this is what I've been told. I've been told that this was an original uniform from before during the San Francisco days, right?
But like, wasn't it the remember like the Otto Porter, Wilt Chamberlain memes that was his son, and they were wearing like the same kind of uniform.
That one has a yellow numbers,
but it's the same like basic design, right? Just as Warriors across in the same font.
As opposed to San Francisco, it just says Warriors, is what you're saying.
Don't they both? It says Warriors, right? It said Warriors 2 years ago. It says Warriors now.
I thought it said San Francisco, but like the ones that are out now say San Francisco, I think, right?
No, they say Warriors.
Okay, I'm confused then. Okay.
Anyway,
I don't know how they're new then, because we've seen these before then. But anyway, do you like them?
Not particularly. I don't hate them, but I'm just like, whatever. I didn't like the blue ones they used 2 years ago.
You can take this out of the podcast. I was just
okay. Cool, man. Thanks for coming on.